How do you secure developer machines at your company today? It's probably the same way you did it in 2025. It's probably the same way you did it in 2024. In all likelihood, your approach to securing the machines you hand to your developers is the same as it has been for years. The problem is that the way in which developers work looks nothing like it did in 2025 and nothing like it did in 2024. We have gone from writing code like cavemen in VS Code to having AI agents do it all for us, including executing commands and connecting to third-party servers automatically. Developers are already having a hard enough time keeping up themselves. So if the developers are struggling, then the security team has to be struggling too. I get messages on Twitter all the time from people just saying like, what are you even talking about? They don't know what some of this even looks like. They hear me talk about MCP servers and skills and agentic development, and they go like, I don't get it. So I'm going to show what some of this is. How do I write code? What does my development setup look like? And then I can build a picture of what that means for security. I use two tools: Google's anti-gravity and Claude Code. Primarily, I use anti-gravity. I also have an agent running that I can communicate with and get it to write pull requests and review things for me. Let me just walk through what all of this looks like though. I might want to tell the AI, hey, I have these integrations with Google and Microsoft. I'd like you to add support for Zoho Workspace. Look at the code, find some similar comparisons, research how Zoho works, and then build that integration for me. Now go do it. So as you can see, it's starting off by just reading a bunch of files to understand this project. And that's it. I'm now just letting it run. Anti-gravity does expose a bunch of settings to decide how this AI works. Review policy. Sometimes anti-gravity will create a document first as a guide. The question is, do you want me to approve it first or are you good? And the answer is you're good. Are you allowed to run terminal commands? The answer is you're good. Just do it. You might be looking at that and go, that is really risky, Zach. You're letting it run any commands on your machine. Yeah. Is it able to access get ignored files? Yes. Am I able to access files from outside of my workspace? Yes. Create knowledge documents? Yes. I think you get the idea. There are a bunch of settings that can be configured, a lot of which are going to be set to YOLO. A lot of people will say that's super risky of you. People who believe that their human review is somehow saving them, they're being fooled. But this is a different issue for a different video. The point is, you can safely assume plenty of your developers are running settings that look like that. Always run commands, always proceed, just fucking do it. This is still running. I stopped it now because I don't actually need this code. As you can see, this has written a lot of code for me. All I have to do is click accept. I actually find the accept part annoying. I just want it done. Clarify for the people who are freaking out right now. I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just telling you this is a thing that your developers are doing. If you're telling me that your developers are too smart and enlightened to do this, like, no, they're not. Your developers are definitely running full YOLO mode permissions and clicking approve on everything. That's just a fact. There's plenty of ways to influence the way in which this agent works. One of which would be to have a agents.md file that guides your agent towards how you want it to behave. I've written a bunch of rules to tell it, here's how I want the code written, because I'm a dinosaur and I still care about code quality. I can also have skills which influence the behavior of my AI agent, and I can have MCP servers. I'm not going to dive into skills and MCP here, but I will link to two videos in the description that explain very clearly what they are. These things influence the behavior of your AI. But I actually go further than that. I run an always-on AI programming agent I built myself called Palpatine after the Star Wars dude. I didn't get to pick that name. And that agent for me is automating a lot of work as well. Specifically, it loops over tasks to try to complete harder tasks in multiple iterations. It also runs code reviews automatically. It responds to my GitHub pull request comments. It takes tasks via Slack. And let me just show some of that briefly. This is me talking to Palpatine. And I can first just ask a question like, tell me which billing provider we are integrated into. You can actually see that it then gives me this little I'm thinking face. And then it looks through my code and it solves it. It says, okay, you're using Stripe. I can also submit tasks to it via Slack. It actually creates this whole task list that has to check off one by one that come with a bunch of rules as well, including the ability to later go in and modify itself to improve its own rules so that it does a better job in the future. It will make pull requests for us. And then when we comment and say, hey, I actually want it done this way, it will just make those changes, push those changes, let us know in Slack. And if there is something to learn from that, it will update itself so it remembers. I can give Palpatine really large tasks with many, many steps because it will continue to try until it finishes all of the steps. This is, I guess, Ralph looping is what they call this. I'm not saying this is good and I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying this is a thing. this exists. This is the space of how developers today are approaching code generation. And what does that say about how we secure these machines? Of course, in my context, I am a tiny startup of 3 people. We don't have customers and we don't have a production environment. So there are risks we're allowed to take. But if you are a company with intellectual property you want to protect, with customer data that you need to protect, you need to think about this question. I'm not talking about code security here. If your developers are morons and they're merging code that they don't understand into production, that's a different issue. What I am talking about is the way in which this has made your developer machines into a vulnerable asset in your organization. I think that we can approach this by asking 3 basic questions. It won't solve all of your security problems, but it's a good start. First, what are your devs doing? I don't mean what do they have installed, but that's part of it. How do they actually work? What permissions did they set? What does this flow look like? Instead of just saying, oh, they use anti-gravity, I use anti-gravity. I also have this bot that uses anti-gravity that magically makes code happen in the middle of the night and can push pull requests. And I think that is like a very first starting level. You can't just ask what's installed. I need you to just look. I need you to go watch. You have to do it in a non-judgmental way, right? If they're getting in trouble for it, you're not going to tell you the truth. So I think it's just good to observe. And the second question is, what can developer machines do? This is where I think there's a lot of work to be done. Most places, developers have a higher level of permissions than other users. But I mean, how high are we talking here? Can your developers push Terraform changes? Can they access production data? I understand the answer should to most of these questions be no, but in a world where your developers were doing things manually, let's not kid ourselves. A lot of companies have allowed developer machines to have more permissions because they were very human driven. That's Dave. Dave's a really 10x developer. We trust Dave. Is it good security practice? No. Was it going to kill you? Probably not. Now we're in a world where we say, what can dev machines do? Let's go ahead and assume that everything they can do, they will do. Because they won't do it, a AI agent will. When I went to make that Zoho integration, one of the things it did is it went and searched all of the documentation on the internet. Now, this is a huge prompt injection surface. If Zoho returns something malicious here, or if a site that my agent believed to be Zoho, I hope I'm saying Zoho right, then my agent might go completely off the rails. Okay. And it has the ability to execute commands on my machine. Don't tell me that this machine is trustworthy because this machine is no longer being controlled by your developer. This machine is now being controlled by an AI agent that your developer is almost certainly not watching. Of course, it depends on the answer in the first part, but it's worth thinking in those terms. Now, I can already hear people in the background going like, yeah, we should have always treated it that way. And again, I get it. But maybe now it's time to take it a bit more seriously. Okay. I get it. You all pretend that you ran perfect identity management and perfect permissions and everything. Let's go double check, right? One thing that happens is people don't really realize everything their machine can do. So you kind of have to ask it as like, okay, what do you do on your machine? And they will then eventually reveal that like, oh yeah, I guess I can get into production. And then the third and final point that I have is how are you monitoring the actions that get taken? So given that developer machines can do a lot, and given that your developers are doing some crazy things on them, how do you monitor what the behaviors are? If you could just see the output of my logs for what anti-gravity is doing, I mean, that alone gets you a long way. No, it's not great security control by any means, but if you don't have that visibility and observability, then you really flying blind as a team. So I think we need to think like, what are your devs doing? What can dev machines do? And then how can I see it? Now, if you have these 3 things, if you can answer these questions as a security team, my guess is you are ahead of most security teams today. I am not an expert in how to actually manage these devices. I know some people who are, and I might try to get some of them on the channel to make a video to talk about how would you build these machines? How would you permission them? How would you manage them? That is not my area. What I'm trying to encourage is just a very basic level of here's what it looks like, guys. Can you answer these questions? If you can't, you should probably put in that work now. So that's all I have for you guys for now. I'm not trying to dive in to say, here's all the ways you can fix things. I'm trying to say that's a problem.